Just a few days earlier, Ukraine destroyed the Iskandar depot successfully. Now it was time to attack the convoy sent to rebuild it. 2:35 a.m., Russia's general staff was planning a logistics convoy. It was not just random, but included important materials to restore the launch of the Iskandar depot. Since the depot was non-operational, Russia was unable to sustain its counterstrikes in the region. If it reaches the destination, the facility might be in service within a month. Ukraine was quick to find out about their plan. The Russian army loads trucks with relevant supplies, such as concrete, steel supports, and generators, near a military logistics hub. Because they trusted the routine measures, they followed the same nighttime movement and took indirect routes to ensure the convoy's safety. Ukraine detected this activity. Signals intelligence found a sudden spike in encrypted traffic along the route. Then the entire decisive line emerged. The convoy's destination aligned exactly with the previously destroyed Iskandar storage site for Kiev. Ukraine understood the maths. This convoy became its next target. 2:40 a.m. With engines throttled low, dim lights and tight spaces between the vehicles, the convoy is on the route. As if the Russians thought everything would go perfectly, the sky suddenly changed. A Ukrainian drone hit the lead truck out of nowhere. Metal hit metal. The impact of the crash was intense, throwing the truck onto its side on the road. It resulted in concrete spilling. In a moment, another disaster happened. The vehicles behind the damaged truck slammed on their brakes, eventually losing momentum. Now the road was blocked and they were unable to continue their journey. A few seconds later, the rear was also shot, igniting a fire at the tail of the convoy. Since the front and back were burning, the middle trucks were stuck. When Russians thought this might be the end, that is when the actual assault was about to begin. Around 2:45 a.m., several drones landed straight on the remaining convoy. A command vehicle was their first target, its antennas falling apart. Communication was disrupted on the spot. It meant no orders could be received from the bunker, just the vehicles getting burnt. Next, the trucks carrying reinforced concrete and steel supports were hit. The blast completely tore away their cargo, sending tiny pieces on the road. Due to the impact, one sealed container detonated with a piercing sound. Even the nearby vehicles flip. Russian air defense tried to take action, but it was too late. By 2:50 a.m., the situation was out of control. Short-range systems fired blindly into the dark. When any drone was intercepted, another would break into somewhere. About 15 to 20 drones were engaged in this strike, which was considered not a typical strike against a logistics target. Then came the secondary explosions. At first, they sounded different, not the sharp crack of drone impacts, but deeper, heavier detonations rolling through the darkness. Fuel tanks ignited almost simultaneously. Tires burst under extreme heat. Diesel poured across the asphalt and caught fire, feeding the inferno. It was total chaos. Within seconds, thermal signatures spiked so sharply that the entire area lit up like a beacon. Sensors later confirmed the fires were detectable from more than 10 kilometers away. Drivers ran. Some abandoned their vehicles without even shutting off the engines. Doors were left hanging open. Headlights burned uselessly into smoke-filled darkness. A few soldiers tried to take cover along the roadside, but there was nowhere safe to go. Vehicles that had not yet been hit were now surrounded by flame, boxed in by wreckage at the front and rear. In less than 15 minutes, the convoy stopped being a convoy. It became wreckage. This was not a disruption. This was annihilation. The battle did not slow after the first wave. It intensified. What remained of the convoy was no longer a formation. It was a chain of burning targets, broken and stretched across roughly 1.3 kilometers of roadway. Each vehicle burned at a different intensity, creating a staggered thermal pattern visible from the air. Ukrainian reconnaissance drones never left. They remained overhead, maintaining uninterrupted visual contact. Every thermal flare became a data point. Every surviving truck became a marked object. Follow-on strike drones moved in with precision. This phase was deliberate. Vehicles that had escaped the initial impacts were not ignored. They were hunted. One truck attempted to turn off the road, trying to escape into the darkness. A drone descended almost vertically and struck from above. Within seconds, the vehicle erupted into flames. Another truck, still fully loaded but abandoned, was destroyed strategically to eliminate any chance of recovery. There was no panic in the execution. This was controlled destruction. Analysts later concluded that at least 80% of the convoy's vehicles were destroyed or disabled beyond repair during this second phase alone, and the engagement window was still open. Russian forces tried to respond. Small arms fire lit up the night as soldiers fired blindly at shapes moving faster than human reaction time. Tracers cut through smoke and flame, but they hit nothing. Short-range air defense systems were repositioned in haste, but they were fighting geometry, not numbers. The drones were low, fast, and coming from multiple vectors. More than 25 Ukrainian UAVs were assessed to have operated over the convoy area during the engagement, rotating in waves. When one pulled away, another took its place. The defenders simply ran out of time. Then came the detonations that confirmed the worst. Multiple sealed containers ignited almost back-to-back. These explosions were sharper, more concussive. The fragmentation patterns were wrong for fuel or construction materials. Debris spread outward in dense, violent bursts. Intelligence assessments later indicated that these containers held specialized missile handling equipment, power control units, and storage support systems. These were not items that could be replaced quickly. Replacement timelines were measured not in weeks, but in 6 to 12 months. The firestorm escalated rapidly. Thermal readings peaked above 900 degrees Celsius in several areas, hot enough to warp reinforced steel. Flames rose high enough to be detected by satellite sensors before sunrise. One infrared pass recorded a heat plume visible from more than 12 kilometers away. At that point, the Russian army collapsed. Crews abandoned vehicles. Engines were left running until they seized. Cargo burned where it sat. Secondary explosions continued for more than 40 minutes, tearing craters into the roadway and scattering debris across a 50 to 70 meter radius. Each blast erased any remaining possibility of salvage. By the time Ukrainian drones disengaged, the numbers were devastating. Dozens of vehicles were destroyed, tens of millions of dollars in materials were erased. A recovery operation was eliminated before it ever reached its destination. But the deeper impact was strategic. This convoy had been Russia's fastest option to resurrect a destroyed Iskandar depot. Instead, it proved something far more dangerous for Moscow. Even the act of rebuilding was now vulnerable. The rear was no longer safe. Recovery was no longer guaranteed. As fires burned into the early morning hours, one reality settled in. The convoy was gone, and with it, the last real chance to bring that Iskandar site back from the rubble. By sunrise, the outcome was undeniable. The convoy was not delayed, not scattered. It was erased. What remained on the roadway was a burned corridor stretching more than a kilometer. Twisted frames, cratered asphalt, melted steel fused into the road surface. No vehicle capable of movement survived. No cargo remained intact. This was the moment the recovery mission officially died. Russian emergency and security units arrived cautiously, hours too late. Thermal pockets still burned beneath the wreckage. Ammunition continued to cook off sporadically, forcing engineers to keep their distance. Several vehicles could not be approached at all due to the risk of delayed detonations. By estimates, over 90% of transported materials were either destroyed or contaminated beyond use. Even worse was what could not be replaced quickly. Missile handling systems, power control modules, reinforced structural components, items with production lead times of 6 to 18 months, lost in a single night. Analysts later assessed the convoy's total material value at $60 to $80 million, excluding the missiles it was meant to shelter. The road itself was destroyed. Craters up to 2 meters deep cut through the asphalt. Debris fields extended 70 meters from impact points. The route would require weeks of repair before it could support heavy transport again. That delay alone eliminated any immediate follow-on attempt. But the damage was not only physical. This convoy was Russia's fastest route to restoring the destroyed Iskandar depot. Without it, timelines collapsed. Emergency repair plans were shelved. Replacement convoys would require rerouting, heavier protection, and significantly greater risk. What was meant to revive a strategic capability instead exposed its fragility. The mission did not fail at the depot. It failed on the road, and with that failure, the consequences spread far beyond the wreckage. The destroyed convoy created an immediate operational vacuum. Without materials, without equipment, and without a secure route, the Iskandar depot remained exactly what it had been after the initial strike: a ruin. Russian engineers assessed the site within days. Their conclusion was blunt. Structural reinforcement could not begin. Power systems could not be reinstalled. Missile handling areas remained exposed. Internal assessments reportedly concluded that restoring even partial functionality would now take at least 4 to 6 months, assuming uninterrupted logistics. That assumption was no longer realistic. The delay had measurable effects. Open-source strike data showed a noticeable drop, estimated at 25% to 35% in Iskandar launch frequency in the affected sector over the following weeks. Fewer launches, longer gaps, reduced operational pressure, all traced back to a single night on a single road. This was not just a successful strike. It was a systems-level disruption executed with precision. Ukraine did not simply destroy vehicles. It dismantled a recovery effort, exposed logistical vulnerability, and extended the impact of an earlier strike without ever touching the depot again. The message was clear: rebuilding would be watched, convoys would be hunted, and even the act of recovery was now a target. By the time the smoke cleared and the fires finally died, nothing remained to move, nothing remained to recover, and nothing remained to protect. The road stood silent, blackened and broken. The convoy was gone, and with it, the last real chance to bring that Iskandar site back from the rubble.